It's a pleasure to be able to talk to all of you this morning. From my standpoint, I'll always be that person, and a lot of years of being a CEO that would say cash flows are extremely important to all of us as leaders and those of us who work within organizations. I really always think about something. I would say it's not so different after all. It's no different really when you're in a business of understanding cash flows as it is in your home. And what can we project and what can we think about as far as cash? I love the Yogi Berra commercial that he would say, cash is almost like money. The reality of it is it's very important to us. And I don't think it's ever going to be the same for us as we project these. I do believe this is something that this environment of the pandemic is going to change, and it's going to change the way we look at it, especially not-for-profits. And I will tell you, as I learn more as a member of the Strategy Solutions team, I'm very pleased and very impressed to see the tools that Strategy Solutions has, but even more important, the experience and the abilities that Debbie herself has. I think that's very important for all of you to hear, and the team, including Jackie and others. So this is important. Understand the tools, and it's not like someone is using the tools that doesn't understand how to use it. And Debbie is the CEO of a company as well. So I think it'll give you a very good look at what we might be expecting when we project cash flows post the pandemic. Debbie?
So, well, we are covered. Go ahead.
Hello, Debbie.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Or Jackie?
So thanks for that introduction, John. So I just want to welcome everyone to our Thriving Beyond Crisis webinar series. The webinar topic today is Projecting Cash Flow, Understanding Your Financial Future. And as John mentioned, it will be a very kind of tactical, strategic, hands-on exercise that Deb and John will be doing with all of you today. And for those of you who joined us late, you will be getting a copy of this recording and all of the slides and materials immediately following this presentation. And we ask that you please just use question and answer feature if you have questions. So before we dive in, I did just want to tell you a little bit about Strategy Solutions. For those of you who may be new to us, I do see lots of friendly faces on our participant list. So Strategy Solutions is based in Erie, Pennsylvania, although we do work everywhere and in every sector. And Strategy Solutions really exists with the hope to help create healthy communities. And for us, it's really about supporting all of the organizations in a multitude of sectors and equipping them to really live into and maximize their ability to fulfill their mission in the community. And for us, it's all about helping to create those healthy organizations that we know then will help create those healthy communities. So we do, market research, strategic planning, organizational development, fundraising, marketing. We do a whole bunch of variety of activities, but really it's about helping organizations live into and really fulfill the strength and the value of their mission in the work that they do. And for us, one of the ways we're able to do that now during this pandemic is to just share knowledge and information with all of you. So hopefully you'll learn something to take away. If there's additional support or information you need, I'll reiterate at the end, but please reach out to us. We're happy to set up a time to talk to you, help you fill this, cash flow forecast spreadsheet out, whatever it takes. We're really just here to help all of you continue to live and fulfill your mission during these challenging times. So we do have a panel that will be doing this webinar series. Today you'll have the fortune of hearing from both Deb and John, and Margie shows up in some of the other webinars that will be part of this webinar series and were part of the previous series that we did. So with that, I would like to introduce Deborah Thompson, who is the founder and CEO of Strategy Solutions.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk with you today about one of the things that I'm actually very passionate about, but I don't advertise very much that I have any expertise in whatsoever. I was talking to John before we started the webinar this morning saying, you know, I never highlight my background and experience in accounting and financial analysis because I much prefer to be in the strategic planning and organizational development space. But my very first professional job was working as a bookkeeper for an accountant for 2 years, after which I spent 7 years doing the bookkeeping and financial forecasting for my own business. And then I spent a year at the Gannon University Small Business Development Center while I was in graduate school doing demand analysis and cash flow forecasting for business plans for entrepreneurs who wanted to get loans for their businesses. And then I spent, you know, the next part of my career, which includes Strategy Solutions. We actually do business planning for organizations that not only includes the market research and the strategic components of it, but also includes the cash flow forecasting for, you know, the things that they're in. And if I had a nickel for every CFO over the years that I actually taught how to do cash flow forecasting so that they could figure out whether or not their organization had a sustainable business model, I wouldn't have to worry about cash flow for my organization. So I joke about that sometimes, but I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk about these things moving forward. And John is a new member of the Strategy Solutions team, and I love it when he puts his CEO hat on.
And she
So
loves
I'm going to let him do that
off.
now for a couple minutes.
I'm sorry, Deb. I didn't hear your last line. I apologize.
I said I'm going to let you put your CEO hat on for a couple minutes.
Okay, thanks. I think I was saying she loves it when I take it off as well. But from the standpoint of having it on, look, I think so many of us need to make sure we make decisions that surround cash flow. And if we're not, we're missing it. You know, it's kind of, I think, the lost leader of financial management sometimes. So many people are looking at balance sheets and they're looking at the statement of revenues and expenses. But I would always want to know, almost on a, you know, at least once a week, sit down, talk with my CFO and say, let's talk about cash flows. And it's really important that we understand that forecasting, and you'll see this, I don't need to read it to you, but the very, very important parts of this, and making sure your organization understands what's going on and your board. And I'm going to reiterate that that it's going to change forever, I think, and how we do that. So look at the 4 objectives, understand the importance, understand what's involved in it, learn how to forecast cash flow to determine how long your current resources will sustain you. Very, very important for you to understand that, and what to do to identify the next steps to help you update your financial plans. And we will be talking about fundraising in future parts of this webinar. So with that, Deb, I'll really kind of turn it all over to you. We talk about Amara's Law every once in a while and that phenomenon, but take it away, Deb.
Okay, so we're really, I mean, one of the things that has always struck me, particularly in nonprofit sectors, is the fact that we don't really do a lot of cash flow forecasting. But I think we're going to have to, because we're going to have to do ongoing scenario analysis in the future with everything that we do. Go to the next slide, please. So why project cash flow? A cash flow statement, which you can get if you're using QuickBooks or Great Plains or another financial analysis tool, it offers an overview of the inflows and outflows of cash for the period, providing a useful overview of the cash flow, the cash position. But a cash flow projection, on the other hand, offers that futuristic view of the inflows and outflows and helps managers better plan the activities in the future. And that's what we're talking about here today. And in order to complete a cash flow analysis, the next slide actually talks about the 3 steps. We want to enter last year's financial performance information, talk about this year's budgeted revenue, expenses, and cash outlays, which are somewhat different than expenses, and then utilize the tool for what-if analysis. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen and actually show you how this tool actually works. So the first tab of the spreadsheet is a summary page that's actually populated from the other information that you put into the spreadsheet. Although I will add the caveat that column G here on this first spreadsheet, you're going to have to build some formulas for based on however many months you have left in your fiscal year from today. And I'll come back to that at the end. The next tab of this actually allows you to put in the last year's actual budget. And we have this starting in July because many nonprofit organizations' fiscal years start in July. But if your fiscal year doesn't start in July, change the months on the top of the spreadsheet in order to be able to show the 12 months of your last fiscal year. The next sheet is the current year budget. And in this sheet, you'll put in information and it'll automatically calculate the rest of it based on the seasonality that you have in your actual budget from the other sheet. Then there's an actual and projections tab that will talk about what happens this year to the end of the year, an opening cash balance sheet, and then a cash flow projection sheet. And I'm going to go through each one of them now, starting with the last year's actual worksheet. Now, you'll notice on this worksheet that there's first of all, in order to start this process, you want to save this template. Save it under a file name as the template on your computer so that if you make any mistakes or you want to start over, you always have the template to go back to. I also recommend that you actually take all of the numbers out of the white sections here so you can actually populate it with your information. The colored highlighted boxes are the ones that have formulas in them, so that I would encourage you to stay away from those unless you want to actually change the formula in them. But the colored areas actually tabulate, so you're better off not touching those spaces. And as I said, if you save the document in the beginning, then you can always go back and fix any problems or start over if you need to, if you have a problem. Now, when you look at this last year's actual, you'll see 2 broad categories of income. There's contributed support at the top, and then there's earned revenue underneath it. We put in some other categories of income that we thought might be helpful, and some of these categories may not be applicable to you. You may wish to change them. But recognize on this sheet that if you change the categories here, you're going to want to change the categories on the next couple of sheets as well, because they match one another. So you want to save them on any changes here on the last year, actual, current year budget, and actuals and projections, because these all mirror one another. So earned revenue is the next category. We distinguish it between government grants and state grants, if you're receiving fee for service. Now, under here, we have expenses and cash outflows. And here's where this is a little bit different than just expenses, because we've given you a category here that aggregates all salaries, wages and benefits or all costs associated with a program. And if you're listening and you're a small business or a for-profit organization, you might want to have a separate expense category for cost of goods sold because you have materials costs, but you can fill that in there perhaps under program 1 or program 2. And we find that the majority of organizations actually put all salaries and benefits together. So we lump them together in one line item. Again, you can separate it, but you want to make sure that you make any changes on the other 2 worksheets as well. And then there's a category for professional services. We also included loan payments because loan payments, as opposed to interest expense, which you'll find on a financial statement, you want to include the entire payment for loan payments or credit cards or other expenses. Whereas, like if you're doing a financial statement, you're only recording the interest expense. In a cash flow forecast related to the budget here, you want the actual cash outflows. So whatever you do in order to demonstrate the cash outflows is what you want to put in those categories, so that it's not just the expenses, it includes all the cash outflows, including principal payments or credit card payments. The next sheet is the current year budget. And the way this is set up is it mirrors the sheet before, but it gives you a way of outlining your annual budget. And then these gray shaded boxes actually formalize the distribution of your annual budget based on the seasonality that your actual budget had last year. Okay, which is kind of a cool feature of the way this was set up. And I do want to give credit to the folks at the Delaware Nonprofit Association, as I've modeled this presentation after and adapted this worksheet a little bit from what they put together. So this was kind of a brilliant way of putting this, of outlaying this and actually designing the seasonality into this current year budget. Which is a very nice feature. You can change that. You can change that if you want or need to, related to the way the budget is set up. Were you trying to say something, John?
Yeah, I just said chime in. I think that's such a valuable feature of this tool that I've not seen that often in other presentations of this projection, but I think seasonality is so important in so many of our businesses, especially nonprofits.
Right. So the next tab is the actual and projections tab. And what you want to do on this tab is you want to look at your fiscal year to date actuals, whether the fiscal year started in July or it started in January, it doesn't matter. You want to aggregate whatever numbers you've had in this fiscal year to date so far and put it in the column C for each of these line items. And then what you want to do is you want to start to project out through the rest of the year what's going to happen, and use this particular worksheet to test your potential responses. You want to look at what you usually get and what you might actually get moving forward, depending on what's happening in today's environment. And what's nice about this spreadsheet is at the very bottom, the net cash line results from the income and expenses that you're expecting to occur. Now, many of the organizations that we've been talking to are trying to keep employees on the payroll, but other organizations have furloughed some employees, and their salary and wage and benefit costs have gone down as a result of that. So you can immediately see what happens to your monthly revenue once you start plugging in these numbers, and you can forecast out. And many organizations will be applying for special relief from community foundations or a loan from the SBA, here's where you can make a guess regarding the extent of the funds that you might receive and when they might become available. An important factor that everybody thinks about is that if you receive payments from the state, you want to check with your program managers to see if they're going to be expecting to be paid on time, so that you're actually forecasting your revenue of when you might actually get it. And for those of you who have government contracts, you may not be able to actually get the revenue that you typically get, especially if they're done, if your contracts are on a fee-for-service basis. But one of the things that is nice about this particular spreadsheet is underneath the net cash, you'll see on line 43, average monthly expenses. There you can see what the average monthly expenses are moving forward, which actually gives you a sense of, how much do you need to have moving forward and how much do you need to have per month. And we're advising folks to forecast out at least 6 months, but you may want to go to at least the end of this year or longer, because, some people are forecasting the disruption might be 6 months. It might actually be longer than that moving forward. This next spreadsheet is actually set up for you to look at what your opening cash balance is, and this will actually populate in the next sheet, which is the cash flow forecast. Now, some people are actually looking at, in addition to the cash they might have in their checking account, they might have cash in their savings account or in a money market fund that they can actually draw on to help support their continued operations. They might have other unrestricted cash or securities that they could draw upon. But this will allow you to put in those various numbers, and some of it actually goes to cell D5 on the cash flow projection sheet, which is the next sheet. And there are also some people that might have some restricted balance from a project from a previous year, or from a donation that somebody gave you for maybe a piece of equipment or something, that you could contact the donor and say, may we use this donation not for the thing that it was earmarked for, but could we use it to help fund our operations moving forward? You might be able to get some what is now restricted cash released for use. You also may have an endowment fund that you could use some of the principal of for your operations if you needed to with board authorization. So the bottom part of this particular spreadsheet allows you to look at any other cash that you might get from restricted sources that you can add into your cash flow. And then this, yes.
Excuse me. I just think this is really important for everybody to hear right now, just on the current environment. And I think you'll hear this from Margie, but in earlier seminars, Margie was very straightforward about saying, in this time, this may be the time you need to go out and ask to have restricted funds released, or changing some processes to help you get through that. So I just say to all of you, you should keep that in your mind right now, especially if you're really feeling a pinch, that it doesn't hurt to go out and ask about those restricted funds. Thanks, Debbie.
Right. Okay, good. And then the last sheet of this worksheet actually allows you, this will calculate automatically the income from the projections and the any restricted fund released. Cell B5 up here at the top is the unrestricted cash on hand that is in your bank account at the beginning of the process. And then it allows you to look at, our inflows in, how much our expenses and cash outflows are for them, for year to date in column C, and then what our net cash is. And then utilizing those numbers then allow you to look at, what our balance is of the cash on hand, less our operating. So it allows you to see how many months of operating cash you have available to you at any given time. And then once you have this all populated, then the very first worksheet then creates a summary of your total income, what your total expenses and cash outflows are, and what your net revenue is or net cash at the end of each period. And the last piece of this you will want to populate, you'll need to make the formula for this particular column G based on how many months are left in your fiscal year. But this allows you to look at what your projections are between now and the end of the year. As you can see, it's a very useful tool. It's a very useful tool to be able to walk through and show your cash flow projections moving forward. So with that, I am going to ask, is there any questions that we might want to cover?
Debbie, can I add one comment to
Sure.
answer? Look, I think all of you will get what I'm about to say, and it's probably something you all know, but in any organization, the place you don't want to get caught not knowing something is your cash flow. You know, that's the one that's virtually impossible to explain to your board. That's the one that's virtually impossible to explain to your employees and your teammates and say, oh, geez, suddenly we're in cash trouble. This is such an important part of day-to-day business. It's such an important part of our day-to-day lives. Stay in tune to where your cash is. In pandemic times or in non-pandemic times, you really need to always understand this.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Deb, for that demonstration on how to fill out the tool. So I did just want to remind everyone that if you didn't already receive that spreadsheet template, we'll make sure that you do so after this, and as well as the slides and the recording of today's presentation. If you do have questions, you do see Deb and John's email up there. Also, we are offering free 30-minute consultative chit chat. So if you would like some more one-on-one time thinking through your cash flow and your spreadsheet, if there's something, another topic that has come up, or just something you feel like you'd like to ask some questions about, or just get some dedicated support around, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to connect you with one of the consultant members on our team. So you'll notice here the info@GetStrategy. That will take you to me, and I'll be happy to help set up any of those presentations for you. So again, just a reminder, you all are muted, so please just use the chat or question and answer if you have any questions. So with that, we'll linger for a few minutes to answer any questions or comments that might come up. But we'd like to thank you all so much for taking the time to spend with us this morning to hear this information. And again, we'll make sure you all have the tools, and we'll be here to answer any questions you have about them as you get started. Deb and John, any final comments?
Not for me. I wish all of you luck during this, and honestly, if we can help, we'd love to do one of the 30-minute briefings with you and more if we can.
And I just want to say thank you to everyone for your participation. Best to you as you move forward with your mission in the future. But we will stay on for a few, we'll shut off the